Athletics can play a massive role in someone's life. Many kids really enjoy sports and join teams. I have never been very athletic myself, as I prefer to just sit inside and play video games or play with my cat all day. But that does not mean I've never done sports before. Today, I will discuss my swimming career. I'm Zach, and this is Storytime number 8 on February 19th, 2021. So this Storytime will work in a very similar way that my previous Storytimes have been laid out. I'll first discuss the backstory, then the story itself, and then I will talk about the aftermath. So for the backstory, I'm going to go all the way back to September of 2013, when I was in the 4th grade. Me and some friends played a ton of soccer at recess, and I started to really enjoy the sport. So my parents let me play team soccer. I played a total of 4 seasons and quit after finishing the spring of 2015. I was in the 5th grade when I quit. Throughout 6th grade, I never played any sports since I was not very interested in anything. But around spring of 2016, my sister really liked trying all these different sports. This time, she really wanted to swim. I really did not want to swim, but my parents forced me to try it. I actually really enjoyed it, but my sister didn't like it that much, so she quit and I continued. However, she'd come back eventually. So now, backstory is out of the way, let's discuss the beginning. We started swimming on June 4th, 2016. I had only 2 days left of 6th grade. This was a Saturday, and the coach was basically trying to see where we were at. Me and my sister both knew how to swim, but of course we were not used to it as a sport. Our first practice was on June 6, 2016. Me and my sister both were introduced to the group of the team. I should note that our team was split into 5 groups. I won't mention the exact number of these groups, so I'll just refer to them as Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, Group 4, and the seniors. Everyone started as Group 1, and they progressed as they got better. Group 1 and 2 would have practice together, but at different lengths. Group 3 and 4 and seniors would have practice together, of course, at different lengths. The June 6th practice was really fun. I met a few people who eventually became friends. One of these people in particular was named Aki. Of course, Aki is not his real name, but he requests to go by it for his privacy. Anyways, Aki had been swimming for about a year now. He was 6 months younger than me and a grade lower. He also was in Group 1. He was rather tall and he really liked anime, so you could tell that he was a weeb. I often call him Corn Dog, as he often says some of the most random things you can think of regarding food. Like, if I was given a nickel for every time he said ravioli pickle sauce, I would be even richer than Elon Musk. But he was still really nice and really cool in general. He also ran a YouTube channel where he talked about anime. I would then start my YouTube channel just 2 weeks later. We're still friends to this day, and we still talk. However, Aki has since discontinued his YouTube channel and other social media, which I won't explain the reason why. I met others that day, but I don't remember who. Do remember this was almost 5 years ago, and my memory is very vague when it comes to specific practices. So now let's discuss the coach. He was rather laid back and really nice. However, we'd only have him for a few weeks. As he left for a reason I'm not sure. Therefore, we were basically left with an intern coach until a permanent one could be found, so I don't remember him very well. We would get a new coach that September. Now let's talk about the schedule. So the swim schedule was very wild. Remember, I was Group 1 during this time. Now, before I talk about the schedule, I needed to talk about what season this was. So swimming worked year-round and had 2 seasons. There were the short course season, where meets were done in 25-yard pools. This season lasted from September to March. Then there was the long course season. This was the season we were in, and it lasted from April to July. These meetings were done in 50-meter pools. August would be our break from swimming, and it made sense since that's when everyone started school. So now our schedules for the short and long course seasons were different. I'll discuss the short course later, but for the long course, we basically swam 5 days a week, being Monday through Thursday and Saturday. Monday and Wednesday practices were from 4:30 to 5:30. Tuesday and Thursday and Saturday practice were from 10 to 11. For Group 2, just add 15 minutes to each ending time for Group 1. So throughout the summer of 2016, nothing too much happened regarding swim. Of course, as I stated before, I started my YouTube channel on June 20th, 2016, and uploaded my first video on the 22nd, which is now privated. But really nothing big that I could really remember happened during this time. August would be when we take a 1-month break. Me and my family went to the beach during this time. I also began the 7th grade as well. So now we were in September of 2016. Let's discuss the short course schedule. So now that school had started back, we were much more restricted to our times. Now, the way that the schedule worked was that Mondays and Wednesdays were from 4:30 to 5:30, while Tuesdays and Thursdays were from 5:30 to 6:30, and Saturdays stayed the same. It was pretty easy, as I really enjoyed swimming during this time. Also, my sister quit swimming back in August, but she would come back eventually. We also had a new permanent coach. He was from Ohio. He was really nice and very laid back, much like our old coach. Now, he taught us endurance. I remember at one time our warm-up was a 400 freestyle and a 500 freestyle kick. Yeah, that's already about 20% of a mile. Of course, then we did other activities, which were also endurance-based. Throughout the practicing with him, I was able to decide which stroke was my best and which one was my worst. I ultimately decided that breaststroke was my best, as my toes are not naturally pointed. My worst was backstroke, since I struggle so much with water going up my nose, as well as just being in a really awkward position in general. My third best would be butterfly, and my second best was freestyle. As I continued to swim, my friendship with Aki began growing. Now, I'm going to backtrack a little bit, so bear with me. The first time Aki spent the night with me was July 30th, 2016. How do I remember this? Well, we recorded 2 videos together. They're private now, but holy shit, his voice was high. I mean, it made sense. He was only 11 years old when the video was recorded. Of course, my voice was also really high, as I was 12 at the time when I made the video. Me and Aki are both 16 right now, and both of our voices are much deeper. So now that corn dogs are out of the way, let's talk about swim meets. So I had gotten better at swimming and was really wanting to do a swim meet. So I did one on March 4th, 2017. I would do a total of 11 meets throughout my swimming career. So the first meet was originally going to be my second meet. My first meet was supposed to be on January 7th, 2017. However, it started snowing. In case you don't know, basically any state from as north as Virginia to as south as Florida will cancel everything if it snows. I live in North Carolina, so this applies to me. Therefore, this meet was canceled, and my meet would have to be on March 4th. This meet took place at a community college about 45 minutes away. At this meet, I did a 100 freestyle, a 100 backstroke, and a 100 IM. I don't remember what the times were, as this was almost 4 years ago, but I remember being very satisfied and thought this was a great starting point. But we're not done yet. No, I actually got to do one more event. That would be the boys 200 IM team. Basically how this worked was that each member did a 50 of each stroke. I got to do the 50 freestyle. I think the guy who did the butterfly was 14, the guy who did the backstroke was 15, the guy who did the breaststroke was 13, and of course I was 12. We were very successful. I believe we won second place. As a result, I was actually placed on our swim team's boys IM team. I would be the breaststroker. So that was really interesting and really fun. But the best part was that I would have another meet just 3 weeks later on March 25th, 2017. Now, the previous meet was rather small. The second one, however, would be different. This was basically the finale for the short course season. It took place at a really massive pool in downtown Charlotte, about the same distance as the previous meet. I would only participate in this meet on Saturday, and for the most part, I'll do this for most meets. So in case you want to know just how big and important this pool was, well, Michael Phelps himself once swam in this pool. Yeah, one of the most legendary Olympians of all time swam in this pool. This was a massive meet too. For reference, most events in the previous meet had only about 3 or 4 heats. This meet had about 13 heats per event, so I had to wait a while between each meet. I did the 100 IM, the 50 backstroke, and I can't exactly remember the last event. But it was successful. I improved my time on the 100 IM and got a new time for the 50 backstroke. I also learned just how nice competitors can be. So after I had finished the 100 IM, the dude in the lane to the left of mine told me good job and shake my hand. I believe I finished 3 seconds before he did. Now this dude probably doesn't even remember who the hell I am, but if you're watching this somehow, you're cool and you're a really great influence. I should note this kid was on another team. I believe he was 11. I was 12, so... Now, I'm pretty sure my mom and sister did not go to this meet, as I believe they had something else to do. I was, however, with my dad and both of my grandmothers. We went out to eat somewhere, I'm not sure. All I remember was watching an NBA highlight while chewing on a chicken leg. Now, the next meet would not be until June 10th, so let's discuss what happened in between the 2 meets. So after the first meet, I got moved up to Group 2. To be moved up, you basically had to do... You had to be able to do correctly all 4 strokes, dive, and flip turn in a meet. Of course, the easiest way to do this is by simply doing a 100 IM in a meet, which is what I did. I stayed in Group 2 for the rest of my swimming career, although I was in Group 3 temporarily during the summer of 2017. Also, my sister wanted to go back to swimming, so she did that back in April of 2017. So let's move on to June 10th, 2017. This would be my third meet, as well as my very last meet I did in the 12 and younger category. For now on, after this meet, I would be in the 13 and older category, as my 13th birthday was June 21st, 2017. So I swam on both Saturday and Sunday for this meet. Now, this meet was pretty interesting. This meet was very similar like the one in Charlotte, but it was actually at our own pool. There were tons of people, and there were about 13 heats per event. But it wasn't like a crazy big pool. It was literally the pool we had practiced in during the long course season. And I should note that yes, this was my first long course meet. All of my previous meets were short course. Anyways, this meet went very well. Now, I barely remember any of the events I did, as this was just so long ago, about 3.5 years to be more exact, but I do know I did the 50 fly, but I just don't remember the rest, mostly because my memory has just been lost since this wasn't a really important meet. So now, I like to consider that meet to be the true beginning of the long course season, as it really demonstrated what it was like. I had been swimming for a year now, but I really didn't understand how competitive long course was like since that was when I had just started swimming. Now for practice. I was temporarily in Group 3 for the entire long course season. This meant that now I was doing a total of 8 practices compared to only 5 during the short season. So we stopped going on Saturdays in order to do 2 practices on Monday through Thursday. Now we were doing practices from 10 to 11:30 with Groups 3, 4, and the seniors, but we'd actually continue to practice with Groups 1 and 2 between 4:30 to 5:45 on nights. I say we, as my sister, who was only in Group 1, also had to do these too. While you might think that these practices might have been rigorous, they were actually really fun and I had good memories of them. Remember one time my coach bet that I would not do 2 100s of butterfly. Remember, this is long course, so this is in meters, not yards. And I did it. I was so exhausted, and my coach just let me out of practice early because I was so exhausted. But it was really funny and really showed my potential and endurance. Now let's discuss the 4th meet. This took place July 8th and July 9th. This was my first ever meet in the 13 and up category, as I had turned 13 in about 2.5 weeks earlier. So this meet I remember much better than the previous one, but I still don't remember too clearly. It was at the same pool as the previous meet, which is also where we practiced. I remember I did a practice 50 freestyle and my coach timed me. I did it in 41 seconds. However, I did it in 39.5 seconds in the real event. Oh, and since I was with 13 and up, I was hanging out with all the older swimmers. We talked a lot and I made good friends. Now, other than the 50 free, the other event I remember clearly was the 200 IM. So I ended up getting disqualified in this event for doing a flip turn in my transition from butterfly to backstroke. I did this exact thing in the previous event I did in IM, but I didn't get DQ'd in those since I was only 12 years old. They're more stricter for 13 and up, so therefore I got DQ'd. I did this meet on both days, but these are the only 2 events I remember. But probably what I remember most about this meet was the mile. I didn't do the mile, but you want to know who did the mile? A 71-year-old man. Yeah, you heard me right. A 71-year-old man did a 1 mile freestyle as fast as he could. And he did that in, I think, under 25 minutes, which is absolutely insane. Basically, what happened was that this man had actually participated in the mile since he was younger, and I believe he funded the pool. So they let him do the 1 mile event every year, as it was his favorite event. First off, if you're trying to swim an entire mile as fast as possible, you're already crazy. But this dude is 71 years old. He's a legend. So now there was only one last meet for the long course season. This was my 5th meet, and it took place on July 22nd, 2017. This was like the big meet from March, as it was the finale for the long course season, but it was also the exact opposite of the March 25th meet. Very rarely did an event have more than 1 heat, and it was really small. It took place at a pool about an hour and a half away. This time, I remember all the events I did, being the IM team, the 100 butterfly, and the 200 individual IM. So we had a new IM team. Me and the 14-year-old, who is now 15, stayed. We also got another 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. I was the breaststroker, and as that was my best stroke. We did well. I don't think we won. I don't even remember our time, though. Now, for the 100 fly, well, I got DQ'd. This would be the event I get DQ'd the most in my swimming career, as I've always struggled keeping my toes pointed and keeping my feet together, especially for such a challenging stroke as butterfly. I'd eventually get it, but that won't be until much later. Now, the 200 IM was successful as I actually managed to do it properly this time, since I learned from last time. Afterwards, our team celebrated by going to Fats for dinner. I sat with the other IM team members. We ordered like 20 chicken tenders, so we each got 5. We all, of course, had our own fries. I remember one time where the 12-year-old and the 15-year-old were doing something stupid. So they literally went to the bathroom. If I'm correct, I believe they betted over something. It was really ridiculous, but really funny. So for like 10 minutes, it was literally just me and the 14-year-old discussing our events from the meet. Anyways, now we take about the break. So this break was just like any other break. However, our coach had to leave due to family matters back in Ohio. So we were left without a coach, which really didn't matter since it was during break. We got a new coach. This coach, however, would not exactly be very nice, and he took swimming way too seriously. He started out nice as he was more focused on technique rather than endurance, but he would eventually reveal to be too strict and just made swimming feel like torture. I'll get to that later. So now we were with a new coach and we were beginning our short course season. I started the 8th grade during this time. We started out with a bang, having a meet on October 28th, 2017. I remember this meet very well. It took place roughly about 20 minutes away from the pool in downtown Charlotte. I specifically remember the interior of the pool. It was a lot like the pool in Charlotte. However, there was also some diving boards that were extremely high. Considering the pool was like 30 feet deep, yeah, that's crazy. Of course, we couldn't access the diving boards, but they still looked so cool. This is also my sister's first meet, and she too got into Group 2 after finishing this meet. So I did 4 events, being 50 free, 100 IM, 100 backstroke, and the 100 breaststroke. The 50 free in particular was really interesting. So this was probably one of the best events I ever did. Compared to my long course time of 39 seconds, I managed to drop my time all the way to 32.5 seconds. This was crazy. Of course, this was in yards and not meters. It still was really massive though, especially for such a small event as that. I should note that this was also the only 50-yard event 13 and plus can do. The 100 IM went good. I don't remember the time though. The 100 backstroke was really good. I managed to drop like 25 seconds from my previous from way back in March. And then the breaststroke is forgettable. Now let's talk about my mental health during this time. So around September, I started hitting depression, mostly from being bullied at school and online. I also was just stressed out and a ton and felt like I could never catch a break. For math, I was generally given about 3 to 4 pages of homework a night. This stressed me out a ton as I constantly was staying up till late hours to do it. It was graded based on accuracy too, so I couldn't just write a bunch of numbers and get credit. So it really stressed me out a ton. Swimming kind of had an impact on this. Because of swimming, I normally was not getting home until around 6:15. Then I had dinner right when I got home, normally until 7. If I did a page an hour each night, I probably wouldn't be going to sleep until 10 or 11. While this might not seem too bad, do keep in mind that I was trying to make sense of the notes, as it felt like I never understood the math, and it was completely complicated, and I had to just get up at 6:30 in the morning every day. I probably would have done better in this class had I taken 8th grade math, but instead I was moved from 7th grade straight to 9th grade math. I'm glad I did this class though, as it's put me very far ahead now. So that's what was happening with my mental health. Let's go back to swimming. Now we reach November 18th, 2017, probably the most forgettable meet I've ever competed in. Few teams were there, I barely remember the events I did, and I don't even know where it was held, as it was just so forgettable. All I remember was doing the 100 fly, and I got DQ'd for the 2nd time in a row. Yay. I also remember doing the 200 IM there, which I did that. And I think I did a 200 free. I'm not sure. Remember, this took place a very long time ago, so my memory is just vague. So now we reach a time that is not really eventful in general. It was really just practicing. This lasted until January, which then I would have my 8th meet. So remember when my first meet ended up getting canceled and so I had to wait until March to do another meet? Well, this is basically what that meet would have been. It took place January 6, 2018 at the pool we practiced at. I believe I did a 200 IM, a 100 breaststroke, and a 100 butterfly. Oh, and you never guessed what I did on the butterfly. I got DQ'd. Totally didn't see that one coming. Anyways, it was for the exact same reason as before. I didn't point my toes for the entire 100 yards, so I got DQ'd. The other events were pretty insignificant. Now fast forward to March 3rd, 2018. This would be my 9th meet. It was actually the same meet as my very first meet. Interestingly, I did the same event, so instead of a 100 IM, I did a 200 IM. This is really interesting, but it wasn't too significant. So now we reach a very, very dark time in my life. I'm not going to discuss it too much, but basically it involved a depression I had been dealing with since September. I'll discuss it in my 8th grade story time, which will be on March 5th. But basically, how this relates to swimming is I ended up not swimming for like an entire week. Might seem insignificant, but considering it was rare for me to skip a practice, it definitely was a big significance. So I eventually got back to swimming after the darkest day of my life. I came back to swim on March 19th, 2018. I then had my 10th meet on March 25th. So March 25th, 2018 was on a Sunday. We normally only do meets on Saturdays, however, when registering, my mom ended up accidentally signing me any day, and so my coach decided to put me as just Sunday. So this meet was the same meet as the one in Charlotte from here earlier. You know, my second meet, the one that Michael Phelps, the pool that Michael Phelps swam at? Yeah, that one. I believe I did the 100 fly, 100 freestyle, and the 200 IM. Finally, after multiple failed attempts, I actually did not get DQ'd from the 100 fly. You heard me right. I did the 100 fly correctly. I told myself before that if I got DQ'd again, then I'm a total dumbass. Well, that mentality worked. I was not a dumbass. Another interesting thing, too, is that the event, that it was just like me and another dude in this event for the 100 fly. However, this guy was a freaking 17-year-old black dude, and I think it's obvious he kicked my 13-year-old ass. I'm guessing he hadn't swum this event in a while. Lucky. The 200 IM and 100 freestyle went smoothly. So just 3 days later, one of the biggest events of probably my entire life happened, and it affected my swimming career very harshly. So on March 28, 2018, I decided to jump the tennis net. What happened? Well, I broke both of my arms. I had to have surgery on the left arm, and I was out of the water all the way until June. Therefore, while my sister was at practice, I was either doing homework or I was playing Clash Royale on my phone. So obviously, since I had to take basically a 3-month break, I lost most of my skills. However, I had a meeting with my doctor on May 31st, and he said it was okay in about 3 weeks for me to go back to competitively swimming. We listed, and on June 25th, 2018, I was finally back in the water, 4 days after my 14th birthday, and 2 days after getting back from a church trip that did not go very well. See my previous story time on that. It was a great feeling swimming competitively again, as I hadn't swam in over 3 months. So I did practices throughout June and July, and then of course we had our break in August. Now let's fast forward all the way to November 18th, 2018. I was a freshman during this time. My workload and stress was a lot less than 8th grade, mostly because I was now going to early college, where the workload was less and I was away from all the bullies. November 18th, 2018 would be the first meet I did since I broke my arms, and it would also be the last meet I ever did. What I mean is that basically this is my last meet ever. I did the 50 free, 200 IM, and the 200 backstroke. This meet was also very interesting, as it was the only meet I did out of state. So all of my meets I did were in my home state of North Carolina, but this meet actually took place in South Carolina. I live like 20 minutes away from South Carolina, and this pool was only like 45 minutes away. The pool was very similar to the one in Charlotte, but the interesting thing in my opinion was that in front of the pool there was a massive window, so a bunch of sunshine went through the pool. It was pretty cool. Now although this was only 2 years ago, I'm still not sure about my 50 free time. I believe I did it in the 29-second range, but I can't remember. The 200 IM also dropped some time, and I also remember a kid on the left of my lane giving me a handshake after I finished about 4 seconds after he did. And I lost my place, guys. Every time I do these story times, like, I always lose my place at least once in the video, so this is the time that I lost my place. But anyways, I remember, we were talking about the kid who saw me. He finished 4 seconds before I did. I think he noticed my scar on my left arm and realized, oh shit, this might have been this dude's first meet in a long time. I don't know if this was the same kid from the March 2017 meet, but it might have. I believe that kid was 11 and I was 12. Now I was 14, so he probably was 13, meaning he very well could have been the same person. I also want to mention the 200 backstroke. I said earlier that backstroke was my worst stroke. Yes, it was worse than butterfly. At least for butterfly, I had perfect arm technique. I just struggled with dolphin kicks. For backstroke, I had nothing going for me. So for my coach to put me in a 200, that was not a good idea. I did it, but it was so rough. So this meet also came to make me realize something about my coach. Remember when I said this coach was really strict and made swimming feel like torture? This is when I came to that conclusion. So my mom requested that we do this meet just Saturday, but he signed us up for both Saturday and Sunday. My mom was pretty pissed about this, as we had church on Sunday. Plus, my mom also didn't want me going to this event because I was put in some rather ridiculous events, especially for his first meet in 7 months. So my coach put me in the 100 fly, 100 breaststroke, and the 200 free, all in the same day. While the 100 breaststroke wouldn't be too bad, the 200 free and the 100 fly were very excessive, especially for my first meet back in 7 months. 200 backstroke was already absurd, so putting me in literally my least favorite event over and over was just really stupid. My mom emailed him, telling him that we weren't going to be there on Sunday, and he was furious. I believe when we got to practice that Sunday, he was really angry with us since we didn't go on Sunday. But that's his fault though. He put us on both days. It's his fault he signed us up for both days and not just Saturday. So now was getting to the time my interest in swimming started to deplete. I had been swimming for over 2 years now, and was just getting tired of it. Of course, as just stated, my coach was being a dick, but I also just got tired of swimming in general, as well as feeling like it was my life, when it should not be. Swimming was supposed to be a hobby and a fun way to exercise, not feel like something to check off a to-do list or feel like a job. Therefore, my parents decided to just have us go only 2 times a week, being Monday and Wednesday. This worked for a little while, but it still felt like a chore going to swim practice every day. My coach was also getting really pissed off at me because I was just not enjoying swimming anymore. In December, I went to a church event, and I emailed him telling them that I was not going to be at practice that day. I don't remember what his reply was. All I know is that his attitude was pretty mad, and he got pretty ticked off. Like, this meet must have been the most important practice ever if he was that mad, which I highly doubt was the case. It was probably just some normal practice doing random bullshit, so why fret over missing a practice once? Another situation regarding my lack of interest in swimming came in January of 2019. So I was in Group 2, which I practiced 15 minutes longer than Group 1. Even by only doing 2 practices a week, I still felt exhausted as swimming felt absolutely miserable. So me and my parents talked, and so we decided that I can just move back to Group 1 so I get 15 minutes less of practice. So my mom emailed my coach telling him that this is what I want to do, and the coach said he would demote me, but in reality, it really didn't happen. Even though he had demoted me, he was still forcing me to stay 15 minutes more, which completely ruined the point of being demoted. He probably knew why my parents wanted to demote me, but he just completely feigned the situation. I used to go on swim 4 days a week, but then I was going only 2 now. And now I was removing the last 15 minutes of practice. Clearly, he didn't understand my waning interest in the sport, so I ended up having to continue to suffer for 30 minutes more per week. Now we move on to February and March of 2019. These are the last months I spent as a swimmer. I was no longer a competitive swimmer anymore, as my interest in swimming just waned so much. Now, I really wanted to quit swimming entirely, but my parents had different ideas. They wanted me to continue swimming for a really long time. However, I actually had my sister on my side. She too wanted to quit, as she also grew to not like the coach and was going through the same phase I was. So after months of begging, on March 23rd, 2018, my parents finally said we were quitting. They announced this when we were at a restaurant we as a family absolutely love. I don't know why, but this day I was just such in a good mood, and my mood just got even better when I heard this news. That day, my mom emailed my coach telling him that me and my sister were quitting swim. Mom told us about this. Apparently, he never responded. Mom said it was rude and disrespectful, and I agree. I think he should have at least responded with a farewell or thank you for swimming on the team or something like that. Ignoring the message just because you don't like our decision is very petty and childish, in my opinion. Now let's backtrack to March 18th, 2019. This is my last practice ever. I didn't know I wouldn't be swimming in April, so I treated it like a normal practice. I believe my coach yelled at me that day, but I can't remember. It was probably over me not doing a stroke correctly. Looking back at it, I just laughed so much about this. I had the last laugh. I ultimately had the last laugh in that. So one reason my parents didn't want me to quit swim was because of exercise. I wouldn't be getting exercise had I quit swimming. My dad thought I would turn into a fat ass. Well, he's wrong. It's been almost 2 years since I quit swimming, and I'm only 145 pounds, meaning I've only gained about 10 pounds since. I'm taller than my dad, and I weigh less than him, so I'd say I'm pretty healthy right now. This is completely normal, too, as in puberty, you're supposed to gain weight. So yeah, I beat you in that one, Dad. Ha! I think Dad realized this was actually a good thing that I quit, as now the fridge actually had food in it, and my mom didn't have to worry about taking me anywhere. They also were really happy as, after quitting, my grades rose. When I was swimming, I was an AB student, but when I stopped quitting, I turned into an all-A student. So what happened to me mentally after I quit swimming? Well, my mental health skyrocketed. I was extremely happy overall during this time. From March 23rd, 2019, all the way to March of 2020, my happiness was at an all-time high. It felt absolutely amazing to be living during this time. Of course, I think we all know why I became less happy in March of 2020, because of coronavirus. But wow, it was so amazing not to be swimming. What once was so fun and was challenging turned into a chore and just boring. Now that I was done with it would felt so good. Now, something else that happened after me and my sister quit swimming was that Aki also quit swimming. I asked him why he quit, and he said this: "I quit because I felt miserable at swimming. I was burned out and felt left out. The coach was also pretty rude." So in other words, Aki quit for the same reason as me. However, this happened about 6 months after me and my sister quit. Aki was in group 2 when he quit. So throughout the story time, I always talked about me not liking the coach and discussing that he was being an asshole. You might think that maybe he saw potential in me, but that isn't the case. He was like this to everyone on the team, not just me, my sister, or Aki. However, there's another friend who also quit because of the coach. I said it last time that I've been trying to become more social at church. Recently, I met a girl about a year older than me. She also swam for this team and had this coach. She was in group 4. This took place around January of 2020. So she was at practice that day and told the coach that she wouldn't be able to attend practice on Wednesdays because of church and school, which was a completely valid and true reason, as she was stressed with school and needed more time to do her work. Therefore, she should prioritize her schoolwork over a hobby. I should note that she was like me when it came to swim. She didn't take it serious, as it was just a hobby. However, the coach got really mad at her and told her that swimming is more important than church or school. After he said this, she immediately quit the team. What's so funny is that a couple days later, the coach asked her why she quit the team. She never responded to him, but she really didn't need to, as he knew why. She ain't stupid. What happened to her? Well, she attends church more often as she does, and she also does better in school. Basically the same effect as it did with me. I'm glad she made this decision, as no tyrant should control her or anyone's life. It's ridiculous that this coach thinks that school and church are less important than swimming, when it's so glaring it's not the case. Swimming is a hobby. School and church are essentials, therefore they come first. So now that I'm done with the aftermath, I want to discuss a few questions you guys might have. So, have I done any exercise since quitting swim? That'd be a no. As a result, I barely eat anything at all. Would I ever come back to swim? This is probably going to be a big shocker, but I honestly think I'd really enjoy coming back to swim. I never really hated swimming itself. I really enjoyed the challenge, and I really enjoyed trying to beat my own time. What I hated was being forced to do it and my coach treating swim as the most important thing in the world. I think I'd be happy going back to swim, but I would need restrictions in how much I do. If I was to swim again, I think it would be appropriate for me to do only one 45-minute practice a week and have a coach that understands I'm doing this for fun and I'm not taking it seriously. Taking swimming seriously and being forced to do it is what made me stop appreciating it. Just like math in 8th grade, but when I started learning math for fun and not taking it seriously after 8th grade, I started to really enjoy it. Swimming, as well as any other activity, is the same way. Basically, I do swimming again just as long as the coach understands that I have a better life, or not a better, but I just have a life in general, and I swim for fun, and it's never to be taken seriously. If I was to go back to swimming, would I ever consider competitively swimming again, like in meets? I think I would do meets in the future. Of course, I would want to be the one in charge of what I did, as my last coach always seemed to only put me in the events he wanted me to do, that I didn't really like. It might seem selfish, but I think meets would be a lot more fun and even more challenging if I had complete autonomy on what events I did. My strengths are breaststroke, freestyle, and IMs, so those are what I'd be signing up for the most. I'd still be doing every stroke and need to practice all 4 of them, as I'm still doing IM. But I think that putting more emphasis on my strengths as well as my favorite events in general would make them much more fun, as I'm doing the strokes I enjoy and the ones that I want to get better at. I hate backstroke and butterfly. Why the hell should I try to improve those? Like, that's not going to make me start liking them just because, like, I'm getting better. Like, basically, my coach did the opposite. As I mentioned, he kept putting me in the bits I struggle with without really giving me extra practice. He understood backstroke was my worst stroke, so why the hell did he put me in a 200 backstroke the last meet? It's also my first meet in 7 months. Of course, obviously I'd still be practicing backstroke and butterfly, but I think just putting more emphasis on my strengths and not doing as much events that involve backstroke and butterfly, I think that would make those more fun and actually more challenging because I'm actually encouraged to do these, unlike previously where I just wasn't encouraged. I really was not that encouraged to get better times on a 100 fly when 100 flies were absolutely torturous. I'm still in contact with the friends I met while swimming. Well, I'm not in contact with most of them. However, I am still in contact and actively talking to Aki. Would you have continued to swim had you not had a coach who took swimming too seriously? Well, this is a weird question. The coach was part of the reason I quit swimming, but not the only reason. I also quit because of my lack of interest in the sport in general. However, and it was just being burnt out. My interest was just burning out. However, the coach was a reason for me not being interested in the sport anymore. Of course, another reason was because of redundancy, as it felt so boring doing the same thing every practice. I think that if I had a coach who understood my demotivation for swimming, I think they would work hard to try to motivate me to swim again. And then I would probably regain motivation, meaning I wouldn't have quit. So in a way, I might have continued. What's your advice to young athletes who want to quit their sport? My advice is to make sure you absolutely want to quit first. Then I would recommend taking steps. What I tried to do was quit swim entirely all at once. That's not how you quit a sport. Quitting a sport is like trying to ease off of an addiction. You need to take steps. You should start by doing it less. If you practice like me, in the case of like 4 practices a week, you should maybe take a practice off a week. Then continually do it until you feel that even 1 day a week is too much. Another piece of advice would really depend on who your coach is. And that would be to let your coach know about your just starting to wane interest in the sport. Now, if your coach was like mine, then don't do this, as more than likely they'll just force you to do more and they'll be downright assholes. I never did this with my coach, since obviously I knew what would be the outcome. He stated that church was, or not church, but he stated that swimming was more important than school and church. However, if you know you have a good and empathetic coach, then I recommend telling them about it. A good coach will always put their players first, not their sport. Would you have been a mentally stronger person and wiser if you never quit swimming? This is actually a really interesting question. I think that I would be no stronger mentally or wiser as a person had I continued to swim. Here's the thing, swimming kept consistently getting worse and worse. So how am I supposed to learn anything or gain wisdom from doing something I absolutely dread? That's what I question about the education system. Kids dread going to school, so how are they supposed to learn when their main priority is the bell? Just like swimming, you can't improve if you don't enjoy what you're doing. When I enjoyed swimming, I learned a ton and got stronger physically and mentally. But in late 2018 and early 2019, when my motivation for swimming plummeted, I don't think I learned a single damn thing about the sport or anything or any life lessons in general. Don't you think your coach was just trying to encourage you? Absolutely not. There is a difference between encouraging and being an asshole. A coach that encourages understands that swimming is a hobby, and things like school are more important. I remember when I played soccer way back in 2013, one team member was not allowed at practice because his grades were too low. He eventually came back when his grades got better. I wish more coaches were like this, as school comes first and is more important than swimming, soccer, or any other sport. Another attribute that exhibits a coach that encourages is a coach that limits him or herself. A coach must know how much to push a player, as too much pushing is not effective at all. In fact, pushing too much is actually counter-effective, as mine, my sister's, Aki's, and many others' experience shows. A coach that encourages knows how to push, and my swim coach clearly pushed too much. So that wraps up today's Storytime. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Next week on February 26, 2021, I'll be discussing my dreams and how I plan on accomplishing them. Anyways, that's all I have for today, and thank you guys for watching. Bye!